On today's episode of Locked On Pirates, we're going to discuss the 6-1 loss yesterday to the Milwaukee Brewers to kick off the road stand, as well as answering some of your questions here on Twitter Tuesday, which I am trying to make a new thing where we answer a bunch of your questions. And we're going to give our takeaways from the game last night, as well as reviewing a very interesting decision by Derek Shelton, which is one of the questions that you guys had for me. But of course, I am your host who does the most, Ethan Smith, here at Locked On Pirates, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. Of course, as you see on the bottom of the screen, thank you for making me your first listen of the day every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan, or you could follow this podcast on Twitter at Locked On Pirates. With all of that said, let's get into today's episode.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody. I am, of course, your host who does the most, Ethan Smith. Hope you all, again, are having a phenomenal Tuesday, April 19th. Hopefully you all got your taxes done. Tax day was yesterday, so if you're listening to today's episode and you didn't do them, you might be a little too late. And last night, the Pittsburgh Pirates were just a little too late on a certain decision that they made in the loss to the Milwaukee Brewers, who, of course, I believe are going to win the NL Central this year. And this is a big series for the Pirates already in the beginning of the year, facing off against the Milwaukee Brewers this early for a multitude of reasons, I would say, because they're coming off of 4 out of 5 wins in their homestand. And again, it's early on in the year, but you want to be able to compete against the best team in the division, I would say. And for the most part, in the beginning of the game, the Pirates were. You look at the first 3 innings; they were only trailing 1-0. Zach Thompson looked very good outside of giving up that Colton Wong wild pitch, which he scored on. But he didn't really give up that much to the Milwaukee Brewers early on. Then the Pirates tied it in the fourth on Diego Castillo's first home run. Shouts out to him. He's having a lot of firsts. And I also loved his quote about how he said he's had the best moment in his life multiple times over the past week with his first RBI, his first hit, and now his first home run as a Pittsburgh Pirate, which sadly would be their only run of the game despite 8 hits on the game. And that was the thing that I took away from this is the Pittsburgh Pirates actually out-hit the Milwaukee Brewers last night. That was the biggest takeaway that I had from this. And they've hit the ball very well. But I wanted to also talk about this. I keep seeing everybody post about batting average and stuff like that and runs scored, but the Pirates need to continuously score these runs. If you look at where they're scoring their runs, they're scoring them in bunches. They're not scoring them consistently. And that's kind of what the big issue has been, I think, is they're scoring 7 or 8 runs one game, and then you see games like this last night where they only get 1 run off of a home run and really didn't threaten outside that much either. I mean, there wasn't really a lot of threats there for the Pittsburgh Pirates against Milwaukee last night. But of course, the big turnaround in this game came in the 4th inning when Christian Yelich took Zach Thompson yard and scored a grand slam, which was a part of a 5-run inning that would eventually be the last run scored of the entire game for both teams. And Eric Lauer, of course, last night, I said yesterday with Gary that I thought this game last night was going to be the game for the Pirates to kind of get in Milwaukee and at least get a victory. But now they face Corbin Burnes and Brandon Woodruff. That hill is already going to be higher to climb now that you lost Eric Lauer, who had 6 innings pitched, 5 Ks, and only 1 walk and 1 earned run. Of course, Thompson's line ends at 4 innings pitched, 6 earned runs, 5 Ks, and 4 walks. So His command could have been better last night, but again, as one of the questions that you guys asked me, which will be part of our Twitter Tuesday, which will be the second and third segment of today's episode, we'll get into that situation a little bit more later. But to highlight some of the positives from the loss, Ke'Bryan Hayes was 1 for 5. Anything Ke'Bryan Hayes does right now is a positive to me. He's one of the best players, if not the best player on this team. Brian Reynolds contributed a hit. The only players, by the way, who did not have a hit or that started were Kevin Newman, Jake Marisnik, and Roberto Perez, which is a nice sign as well. Daniel Vogelbach in his first game back in Milwaukee with a nice 2 for 3 day. Of course, he had a walk as well. And Castillo, as I also mentioned, of course, was the only player to get on the score sheet for the Pittsburgh Pirates. But again, the bullpen looked phenomenal again. I wanted to emphasize this as well because it's just awesome to see what this team has done outside of the bullpen again. And we did see this last year. We saw the bullpen look very good last year with the likes of Clay Holmes and Richard Rodriguez and a newly acquainted David Bednar alongside Chris Stratton and some of the new names that we're familiar with. But you looked at Dylan Peters last night, man, and he looked awesome. I mean, phenomenal out of the bullpen. And that's one thing we keep talking about Will Crow and David Bednar, but Dylan Peters has had quite the season so far as well. I mean, he's 2-0 so far. Who cares about records that much outside of the bullpen? But yet to give up a run so far in 7 innings pitched, 5 Ks over those 7 innings, and a .57 whip. He's looked awesome, dude. I mean, realistically, looking on what this Pirates team really needs is pitching. I mean, the hitting can come along eventually, but pitching is going to be their big deal. I think that's going to be what's going to hold them back from actually contending in a couple years unless they actually go out and, pull a Francisco Liriano or AJ Burnett-esque player out of their hat again and have a true ace on the roster. But Dylan Peters looked phenomenal last night. I mean, 33 pitches over 3 innings. 11 pitches average in an inning. That's phenomenal. Only 10 balls on those 33 pitches as well. So his ERA stays at 0, 3 Ks and only 1 walk last night. And then Aaron Fletcher came in 1 innings of work. Seven strikes on 9 pitches, looked very phenomenal. 2 Ks in that department as well. And I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from Derek Shelton and how he's using this bullpen because he's just letting guys go out there, especially his long relief guys like a Dylan Peters and a Will Crow, just go out there and show their stuff. And if they're looking good, there's no reason to pull them out of the game, right? So I think we'll see a lot more of that tonight as well with JT Brubaker on the bump against Corbin Burns. I would fully expect that you'll probably get to see a guy like Will Crow play tonight. David Bednar could potentially get some reps in there as well. Dwayne Underwood, who is still injured right now, should be coming back pretty soon. But it could also be at Roansy Contreras night as well. So that'll be very interesting to see what Derek Shelton has planned up in his cards tonight for that. But most of my takeaways from this game were at least the offense was hitting the baseball. That's what I'll say. They were at least getting hits. And Aaron Fletcher and Dylan Peters looked phenomenal. Zach Thompson, up until that grand slam, also looked very good. I will go out and say right now that I think as of right now, excluding Jose Quintana, Zach Thompson is probably the best pitcher on this roster. Starting wise, I would say the best pitchers on the roster right now are all out of the bullpen. Will Crow, Dylan Peters, and David Bednar. I would say those three guys right now have just been lights out. Nothing's getting past them at the moment. And that's what I'm really liking that I'm seeing is already at the beginning of the year, and yes, we're only 10 games in, the Pirates are getting a lot of unlikely production from names they didn't expect to be getting it from. And I think that's been one of the things that has made this team way more fun to watch already than what we saw last year. Because last year, you already knew who was going to give you production. You knew you were going to get the production out of Adam Frazier while he was here. You knew Brian Reynolds was going to take that next step forward. Ke'Bryan Hayes, when he came back, you knew he was going to do that. But everybody else on the roster wasn't really doing much. So you're not going to see the Kai Toms and the Dustin Fowlers and the John Nagowskis of the world this year. There's actual reason for a lot of these guys who don't play well that if they do not play well, they are going to get benched for other guys. And you see that right now with Michael Chavis and Diego Castillo. I think they should be manning the middle infield every day, but Kevin Newman's defense just gives you too much to desire there. I mean, you can't just bench him for that. And a lot of your questions that we'll go ahead and answer here in this next segment have a lot to pertain to Michael Chavis and Diego Castillo and some other things going around in the Pirates organization. But before we get into that, if you want to make some money betting on sports like I do, make sure you use betonline.net, and it is where the game starts. If you want to bet on the Pittsburgh Pirates to defeat the Milwaukee Brewers tonight, you'll win some money as the Pirates are the underdogs, with Milwaukee being a minus 260 favorite and also having a 1-0 series lead after last night. But if you want to go bet on BetOnline and you think JT Brubaker can match up with Corbin Burns, you could do that here at betonline.net. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, which are fully underway, and the start of the Major League Baseball season, which is also fully underway. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, UEFA Champions League, the Premier League, and other soccer leagues, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. And of course, BetOnline is where the game starts. And also, thank you guys for making me your first listen of the day every single day. But if you want to be caught up on everything going on in the world of sports, thank you for making Locked On Pirates your first listen. But for your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts are available, and they are taking fans through the season like no other network. It is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Now, I asked you guys earlier today to drop me some questions about the Pittsburgh Pirates, about what you're seeing going on right now in the organization, anything that you wanted to ask me about, and I am here to answer it. And we are going to start out with friend of the podcast who basically likes every tweet on the Locked On Pirates Twitter page, which is, of course, at Locked On Pirates. Mr. Drew Pirates Drew, asks, why is Chavis not playing every day, but Tucker is? Now, as you heard with the conversation that me and Gary had yesterday, a lot of what the Pirates are still doing, because again, it's only 10 games. It's been, kind of a small sample size. You're going to hear that word a lot on this podcast, a lot from other podcasts about the Pirates, and a lot from a lot of people, that it's just a small sample size right now. But Chavis is playing very well. 500 average going into yesterday was just awesome to see. But Michael Chavis also is more of an infield utility guy. Cole Tucker being more of the full utility guy who can also play in the outfield. He has experience playing in the outfield. Michael Chavis does not. So I think that's a big thing that they're trying to figure out, is they're trying to just allow guys like Cole Tucker and Michael Chavis and Yoshi Tsutsugo and Kevin Newman and a lot of these guys who are on the fringe really to prove themselves, to get at bats. And this is their way of getting Cole Tucker at bats. You don't want to DH him. I don't agree with DHing Cole Tucker, but Jake Marisnick, I also think, should be in the outfield every day alongside Ben Gamble and Brian Reynolds. But again, you can't just cut the tie with Cole Tucker and then not give him any at bats. So right now, they're giving him the at bats to try to prove himself. And so far for Cole Tucker, it's been a rough go of things, I will say. I mean, he hasn't exactly looked like the guy that a lot of people saw in spring training. I mean, he's batting 194 in the early part of the year. He did have a hit last night out of right field. But if he doesn't come along soon, don't expect Tucker to be getting the same playing time that he's getting now if he continues to be below the Mendoza line heading into maybe next week or the week after that. They're just trying to see what they have at their disposal right now. And I agree 100% with what you're saying. Why is Chavis not playing every day? Kind of beats me. I mean, we saw him last night playing first base. I think that's a perfect spot for him because it also allows Diego Castillo to get playing time as well alongside Kevin Newman and Key Brian Hayes, and also makes up one of the better defensive infields in baseball if you make that kind of comparison to that. I think that's a phenomenal way of looking at it. But you also have to make sure that Vogelbach and Tsutsugo are getting their at-bats as well to give them a fair look, because eventually you're going to have a lot of these young prospects come up, and then you have to give them a look and decide, okay, what have these guys done in the sample size that we've given them, and who's going down or is out, period, And that's really what I think they're trying to do now, and that's why Tucker is playing every day. And I already mentioned Castillo, so I will go to Pascal Mansour. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, sir, but I know you also like a lot of the tweets as well. And he asks, shouldn't Castillo be playing every day, no matter how young or inexperienced he is? That goes to the same thing that I was saying before. Diego Castillo, being young and unexperienced, yes, still has a lot of time ahead of him. This is the first time that he's at the major league level. This is the first time the Pirates are actually getting a really long look at him and what he's done, and he's answered the bell. I mean, 310 average, first home run, first RBI, first hit in the past week. He's looked pretty good defensively as well. He's had his hiccups there, but you really look at what Diego Castillo has been able to do, and I mean, a 759 OPS, I'll take that all day, man. I mean, you'll take that every day of the week. And he's 400. I mean, he has a 462 average in away games as well, which is another thing that I like to look at a lot is how you do outside of the confines of PNC Park. But it goes back to the same point I made about the Cole Tucker question is eventually you're going to have to give all of these guys at bats. You can't just say, okay, well, we're cutting you and you didn't give the guy a fair shot. They're all about fairness right now. Now, moving into the months of May, like when you get to the month of May and then probably June, you're going to start noticing that a lot of the lineups are going to be the same. Everything is fluid right now. Everything is, okay, who do we want to get a look at today? Okay, who is going to play second base and shortstop today? Who's going to play right field? Who's going to play first base? There's a lot of missing parts on this team still, which is why it's still a rebuilding team and not a contender, which is no surprise to anybody and should be no surprise to anybody. But you have to find ways to get those missing parts and fill them in. It's like a puzzle right now. They have the puzzle pieces at third base and center field in Brian Reynolds and Key Brian Hayes. Catcher for now is fine with Roberto Perez. You have Jake Marisnick and Ben Gamble. You already know who those guys are. You already know what they offer you. You already know what Kevin Newman offers you. You already pretty much know what Daniel Vogelbach and Yoshi Tsutsugo offer you. So when you're looking at that, and then you look at the guys who have been playing, like Diego Castillo, Michael Chavis, Hoy Park, and Cole Tucker, you don't really know what those guys offer you for the next couple years yet. You're just seeing what they're doing right now, and then you have to make a decision eventually to say, okay, well, I think Michael Chavis and Castillo are the two guys we're going to keep here. And if they say that, then they will move accordingly. Or maybe, which I would hate this, they say Cole Tucker and Hoy Park are the guys we like, and Chavis and Castillo are wherever they end up. That's really how this whole thing is going to go, at least for the next couple of weeks, I would say. I would say once May comes, obviously, because the rosters won't be expanded, you'll definitely see some interesting moves from this team, especially with having Roansy Contreras out of the pen right now. I could definitely see him going back to AAA with that kind of decision. But I also think you're going to see one of these position players get designated for assignment or move down to the AAA level based off of where their minor league options are. So I would keep a close eye on that as well. But Castillo and Chavis have been the talk of the town for the right reasons. I mean, their bats are looking phenomenal. They're adding some kind of juice to this roster that it's needed for a very long time. And I think it's going to be fun to watch both of these guys continuously play. But we have two more questions remaining on today's episode before we wrap it up. But I want to let you guys know about the wonderful people over at Rock Auto. And like I mentioned, I could have used a car as an analogy about what the Pirates have right now. They have some parts, but they're still looking for the other parts to make it a fully functioning machine. And that's what Rock Auto can also help you do, because with the ever increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts in their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. So save time and money when using Rock Auto. And why choose to spend 30 to 100% more for the same parts from an auto or chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you could need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution for your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. make sure you write Locked On Pirates or Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That is rockauto.com. So we have a couple more questions here. One, of course, is from David Holtz, Vast Con Game HQ. Another fun Twitter handle, another fun Twitter guy, and says basically he said a vast majority of Pirates fans who aren't happy, unless they aren't happy, are going to need to find something other than the team to fulfill their needs soon as we get better and better. What do I recommend for them? So I took that as where can Pirates fans find happiness outside of the MLB level? Well, still tune into the MLB games for starters. I mean, this team is fun. It's not going to win a lot of games. It'll probably be in the 65 to 70 win range, like I said before the season started. But the minor leagues are looking very nice right now. Mason Martin is raking in AAA at the current moment. Uh, O'Neal Cruz is in AAA. Travis Swaggerty. A lot of the guys that you're going to see pretty soon are all in AAA right now. But you could also go watch Henry Davis in Single A. He's the number one pick from last year. You can go see what he has to offer and what the future looks like for him. Rodolfo Castro, who we all got to look at last year, has been doing pretty good in the minors as well. And there's been a lot of fun stuff to watch, but MILB.TV, not very expensive. Most of the games are available. Like tonight, the Indianapolis Indians game is on MILB.TV. You can just watch the future of what the Pittsburgh Pirates have to offer, like Nick Gonzalez, like Tucupita Marcano, Leover Piguero, Quentin Priester, Carmen Majinski, Tanaj Thomas, Michael Burrows, Jared Jones, Anthony Solometto, Bubba Chandler. You can watch all these guys play, and that's where you can find some happiness in what the Pirates are doing right now. They're rebuilding, yes, but eventually you're going to see this team get better. And I think they've already took a step forward from last year, maybe not in the win column, but just based off of what is going on the roster right now. And that's where I really agree with a lot that's going on at the moment. I agree that most of the things the Pirates are doing are right besides winning games. I mean, again, they're a rebuilding roster, and I can't really say much outside of that. Or even find another team that kind of piques your interest. For me, it's always been the Toronto Blue Jays. The Toronto Blue Jays have always kind of been a team that I've always been fond of. They've always been a team that I really enjoy watching. So maybe do that, or keep up with the guys that the Pirates have, maybe moved on from in the last couple of years as well. You could really go look at the Yankees. I know we're not big Yankees guys, but Garrett Cole, Jameson Taillon, and Clay Holmes are all there right now. Go look at how Joe Musgrove is doing in San Diego. Go look at how Adam Frazier is doing in Seattle. You could do all that kind of stuff because there's plenty of former Pirates everywhere. There's just one that I don't want to root for right now, and that would be Andrew McCutchen because he's in a Brewers jersey. But our final question today, and probably the biggest one on Twitter last night, comes from Harris Gregory and asks, who's at fault for the Yelich grand slam? I know Thompson threw the pitch, but you'd think Shelton would have pulled him after he loaded the bases. Now, yes, there was a lot of interesting takes about this for the right reasons, of course, because you had Dylan Peters, who is a lefty, already warmed up in the pen and ready to go. You already knew that Yelich was a strong hitter, and Thompson already loaded the bases. Pretty much every sign there points to saying, all right, Zach Thompson shouldn't be in the game anymore. Because at that point, he already walked 4 batters. He allowed a couple runs, all that stuff. I put the fault on Derek Shelton purely because that's his decision. That's just a decision that he's going to have to make as a manager. That is a decision that he's going to have to learn how to make as a manager. And, it's one of those things where, again, one in a 300 chance or 3 out of 10 chance that it happens. We just didn't get the luck of getting the 7th out of 10 where Yelich doesn't do that. And even then, the grand slam part of it is, I think, what most people are getting after. But also, when you look at it for all intents and purposes, I really get into the point where if he doesn't hit a grand slam and it's a one-run single or a 2-run single, I don't think there's that much of a big deal about it. And also, I didn't think the Pirates were going to win this game anyway because they just never really threatened Eric Lauer with much outside of the Castillo home run. But again, I would put the fault on Shelton here, but it's one game. I wouldn't look into it that much, albeit it was the turning point of this game. It was the last run scored in this game, and it sucks, but at the end of the day, it's one game, and it's not like it was like game 162 and the Pirates needed to make the playoffs to do that. But again, I think it's just something that Shelton will learn with time. Relatively, he's still a relatively new manager. His first year, of course, being the COVID year, his second year being a late start year. Or a shortened spring training year, and then of course this year a shortened spring training year as well. So he's still relatively new to all this. So let's give him a little slack, all right? I think that's where we can be at. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Pirates podcast, as you always do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith, and you can find this podcast on Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, and, of course, YouTube at Locked On Pirates. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan. And now that you've made me your first listen of the day, make sure you go listen to Paul Francis Sullivan of Locked On MLB, but please call him Sully. He is recapping everything going on in the world of baseball every single day, past and present, as well as giving his thoughts on how things are going for teams early on in the season. So make sure you go check that out. But with that said, guys, I will see you tomorrow where we will be recapping the Milwaukee and Pittsburgh Pirates game 2 of the series, looking ahead to game 3 and what Chicago has to offer for that 4-game set at Wrigley Field. But until then, guys, I will see you on the flip side.